WestWorld episode 3 of season 3, and I'm wondering, are we just going to bounce back and forth from good episode to bad episode? Or I guess in this case, bad episode to decent episode, or then back to bad? I don't know, but this show really feels uneven so far. So, since we're obviously going to bounce around a little bit in these episodes, because I think that they still want to tell a non-linear story, let's reset a little bit. We are starting from the point of essentially the end, I believe, of episode 1 of this year's show, where we're going to pick up where Dolores and Charlotte Hale basically left off. And as a matter of fact, we're even going to go farther back. We're going to go back to the end of season 1, or perhaps the beginning of season 2, where Charlotte Hale is actually crawling her way towards a Delos host in order to leave a message. So she wakes up the host, telling it to come back online, and then she records a message for her son, and her son Nathan. You don't know that yet, but you will. Anyway, moving forward, we flash forward a bit to where we're seeing a new body be created for Charlotte for some reason. Now, this makes no sense to me. Continuity would show that when Charlotte Hale left the island at the end of season 2 with all of the cores that she had in her purse, she was in a Charlotte Hale body. So I don't know why we'd be needing to make another Charlotte Hale body, but they do. And then we move along later to a conversation between Charlotte and Dolores. Charlotte appears to be confused about who she is, asking, "Who am I?" And Dolores tells her, "You know who you are." Well, of course, this is Teddy. They haven't come out and said that just yet, but we're pretty sure this is a gender-swapped Teddy at this point that is occupying Dolores' body. Excuse me, not Dolores' body, Charlotte Hale's body. Gosh, I don't want to confuse you. But moving forward from there, as you can see, it's Charlotte and Dolores talking about her confusion and then reminding her who she is. And then we have the opening credits with the red resin and all of that fun stuff. And as we move forward, we see Charlotte being the executive that she has always been, smoking there in one of the hallways of the building, which, you'd think smoking would still be illegal in California, but I guess we don't care anymore, or they can fix cancer, or who knows. Anyway, as she moves through her day, she is brought to the I guess, park area of her building, where they are demonstrating one of their riot control robots, which I am sure are going to be a big part of this in the future. This is the kind of tech that you introduce, as you can see as it moves around there. This is the kind of tech you introduce when you want to have a robots versus humans kind of a battle. So we'll see how that goes. Anyway, Charlotte is approached by her head of security, which I believe her name is Armistice, I think. Anyway, she's quite pregnant. In fact, that's, as you can see here, is one of the things that Hale is fixated on at this point. They have a conversation, and it is brought to Charlotte's attention by the head of security lady that they've had somebody secretly buying up a huge chunk of the company in a stealth way, and currently have about 38% of the company, which means they could initiate a hostile takeover. We see that on the tablet, obviously, that's in front of you there. In response to this, or while this is going on, Charlotte starts to use a thumbnail to hurt herself and cause herself to bleed. And Armistice notices this and asks if she's okay, and she says, "Sure, I'm fine." And then Charlotte walks off, grabbing her phone and making a call, we assume to Dolores to let her know that the company's being purchased out from under them. As we move forward, we find a different scene here where Dolores is injured. Obviously, it's a completely different time. So, again, I don't think these are concurrent timelines because this is an evening shot. Charlotte was during a day shot. They're obviously in the same area, I believe. And anyway, so Caleb goes and helps Dolores in whatever way he can. He calls for an emergency services ambulance that arrives. They load her onto a gurney and subsequently into a emergency response vehicle, which is really cool, these self-driving ambulances, so that the onboard paramedics can work on whoever's there. The paramedics that are on board are incredibly confused because none of her vital signs are normal. And of course not, because she's not a human. But they're confused. Caleb, says, well, these are the basics, that we need to do. And he goes ahead and puts an oxygen mask on Dolores and gives them some direction. And then, all of a sudden, the ambulance gets overridden by a police override. It is actually pulling over the ambulance in the midst of this medical emergency. And Caleb has checked his phone and has discovered that the police that are stopping them are obviously corrupt or bought off, and he tells Dolores that if she goes with these cops, she was going to be killed. The cops show up. They look kind of shady. They act kind of shady. They're definitely shady. Caleb gets out and queries them for ID. They try to intimidate him. He's not intimidated. And so they one of them pulls out a firearm. And then he proceeds to shoot the EMTs while Caleb wrestles with the other officer here. And Dolores then takes matters into her own hands. And while she is laying on this gurney initially, she rises out of the circumstance, stabs the policeman that's heavily armed in the neck with a scalpel, which has a nice arterial spray. Caleb has subdued the other policeman and has him at gunpoint, and Dolores isn't having any of that. She doesn't even want to question the other policeman, which would have made a lot of sense since he was already subdued by Caleb. She didn't have to kill him, but she does, and she can't help herself. Dolores then drags the secondary officer over to his police vehicle, opens the door, puts his head in front of the authentication scanner to start the vehicle, then takes that vehicle, tells Caleb before she leaves to run, change his name, all of that stuff, so that he doesn't get caught up in this. Now we flash forward to an evening scene with Charlotte, who is standing somewhere outside of Delos. And she receives a mysterious message on her phone from an unknown number, and it seems to be just a tone on her phone. While she is standing there, Armistice approaches her again. Again, we are led to believe that the person that's acquiring the company is this powerful person named Serac, who we found out about in the last episode with Maeve, and Serac seems to be the person that is being trying to acquire Delos outright. They talk a little bit about how he ended up on their radar, how much he's worth, which is like $1 trillion, which might still be a lot of money in 35, 40 years. I'm assuming it is. But anyway, they're concerned now that they are aware of his presence, what he might do to them now that they know. And there's that. So Charlotte gets into one of the really cool new Uber devices, the self-driving cars that kind of look like a couch or a bunch of seats together. I don't know, it's pretty fancy anyway. And it drives her home. At this point, her phone rings again, another unknown number with another unknown message, which is another audio tone. When she looks up at her apartment, which is obviously the penthouse at the top, which must be at least 2 stories tall, she witnesses a male person walking around her interior of her property. She goes upstairs, and with a little bit of tension, we find out that the person in her property, in her penthouse, is her ex-husband, and his name is Jake. For whatever reason, Jake is overly upset with her, probably because she forgot to pick up their son, so she must be a bad mother, and she ends up, dropping her guard and totally making out with her husband, and it's in a little sexy time. Anyway, when she doesn't realize why she can't make a whole bunch of noise while they're about to get giggity, he tells her, look, I'm really angry with you for forgetting about our son. And she goes in and visits with her little boy, because, obviously her ex-husband told her to go in there and lie to him and tell him that this would never happen again. He doesn't really have a lot of faith in her, and, at this point, I don't think the audience does either. Especially now that we know that it's definitely not Charlotte, because Charlotte's dead, and that this is probably Teddy. Anyway, she goes in, talks with her son, tells him that she's sorry. Her son tells her that he doesn't have a mommy, and she's tries to comfort him in some ways. She does, and then she tucks him into bed, and he says, I want my old mommy back. So apparently she must have been a better mother when she was a human being. I wonder, that seems kind of strange. Anyway, so flash forward to the next day, presumably, and Charlotte is in her office with more security personnel who are bringing to her attention that they have a mole in their midst, and that some of the assets that went missing during the QA audit of everything that happened after the issues that went on at Delos last season, that one of the cores that were missing was Maeve at this point. And we all know Maeve's missing because we saw that in the last episode. Now, they tell her for sure we definitely have a mole. One of the security guys, the only one that talks, actually kind of insinuates that possibly, she would know who it would be. She says, well, maybe I know, because I do know everything. But we leave it there, and Charlotte heads back out. Now, she is desperately trying to reach out to Dolores at this point, obviously on the phone, as she gets into a self-piloted VTOL aircraft. We move forward to a very fancy hotel with a lot of green space outside. It's really cool, where she intends to meet Dolores, obviously, and not surprising at all. Another phone call comes in, another strange audio tone message comes in, and Charlotte listens to it for a brief second, and Dolores arrives. Dolores is, telling her that she can't always hold her hand, and Charlotte lifts up her sleeve to reveal that she's been cutting herself. Dolores immediately negotiates a room in the hotel via her virtual assistant. They go upstairs in an elevator. Dolores also takes care of the rooms on either side of them so that they can have extreme privacy with nobody privy to what's going on from either room. Charlotte asks if that's because she intends to kill her, and Dolores says no, it's not going to come to that. They arrive in the room. Dolores undresses Charlotte to find a pattern on her body that she has cut, a circle dead center, obviously, as you can see, and then down her arm and so on and so forth. Kind of the rough outline of the control points on a robot or something animated. She talks about the fact that perhaps Charlotte Hale's imprint is trying to take over her conscious mind. I don't know how any of that would be possible. I mean, they've obviously taken and put a bunch of memories from Charlotte Hale into Teddy's head, but since this world hasn't made any sense for quite some time, I have no idea where they're going with that element of storytelling. But she heals up all of her wounds with the magic, the little magic wand emitter thingy there. And then they curl up in bed together because Charlotte would like her to go to sleep with her. Now we flip over to Caleb, who is trying to visit his mother, the schizophrenic mother that he has in a care facility, and he discovers on her way to see her that on the Rico app, which is, I guess, the Uber crime app, I don't know. Anyway, that he is now a high-value target and is being sought after by any number of criminals or sketchy human beings. So I really thought it was funny that the way that this phone app works, because you can either say, yes, I'll do this, or no, I won't. And obviously, if you can read this, you can see why it's kind of funny. Anyway, visiting his schizophrenic mom, he tells her that he's probably not going to be back for a while, but the people will take very good care of her. And she says something like, well, where's my son? I want my son back. So clearly she's not in her head. He leaves the room, starts to head down the hallway. He's confronted by two obvious criminals, or sketchy types, we'll say. And one of them he seems to know and or was previously affiliated with. They sort of kind of take him into custody. We move on, cut away to a scene where Dolores is closing the door on the room where Charlotte is sleeping, and she initiates a conversation with the gentleman from Sons of Anarchy, Chibs, I think is what he went by in that. Anyway, I don't know his name. Maybe this is Armistice. I don't know. I don't think so. But anyway, this guy is doing research for her. She puts in a fancy contact lens, which I imagine gives her sight into screens rather than having to hold up a phone to her eye or whatever. And she asks for a update about Caleb Nichols, which is Caleb's last name, and the security guy tells her that Caleb is been just taken into custody by two sketchy dudes in the Vista Treatment Center, obviously. So Dolores sets out on her Tron motorcycle as quickly as she possibly can to supposedly rescue, obviously go rescue Caleb Nichols from these two thugs. Now, the two thugs have taken Caleb up into a skyscraper where he has been working with his robot. If you remember from the first episode, that's where we first meet him. And they put him up essentially to the edge of one of these floors that are very high in the air, probably 10, 12, 15 stories up, and kind of hold him out into the air, threatening to throw him off of the building through this window. And when that doesn't work, they get him down on his knees. Now, of course, his hands are bound with a zip tie because we haven't moved on from zip ties yet. But his hands are bound, and they take a drill tool and they insert it in this fancy oral drip device that is left over from his service days in the military. As you can see, that kind of hurts, and then they are able, because of doing something to that device, they are able to actually control his heart rate, respiration, etc., and they drive his heart up to 200 beats per minute, which is not good. Your heart's not going to last very long under those circumstances. And of course, they're just trying to get the information out of him about Dolores, which he doesn't know a whole lot about her. He doesn't even know her name, I don't believe. And all the while, Dolores is coming to rescue Caleb. She goes ahead and activates Caleb's robot worker companion, I guess, for the construction job, which is kind of neat. And while he is, again, standing on the edge of that window ledge, the robot goes up and tries to confront the two thugs that have taken Caleb up there. And the robot is not exactly super nimble or even intelligent. I think more or less just a distraction. And so the main bad guy just kind of launches the robot off of the ledge, and we see Caleb's reaction of watching his companion robot, hit the ground, and he has some flashbacks and some flash forwards possibly of things that he's had happen in his life or that he's contemplated. And then Dolores shows up, of course, behind the two bad guys and shoots them both dead. Caleb reacts immediately, turning around and dropping his heart rate on the tablet. Dolores releases him by cutting the zip tie. Again, this is a very not, zip ties are I would expect something fancier than that, or something more advanced than an everyday, Home Depot zip tie. Anyway, so we move forward to, I would assume, the following day, since it's now daylight. They were just in nighttime. I'm not sure where they've been all this time, but they're walking through the city in broad daylight, and Dolores has her VA, or the security person that works for her, that is obviously another host, take care of clearing the records and surveillance logs of Caleb. And they head towards someplace to eat. Now we cut back to Charlotte waking up in the hotel where she and Dolores were. She wakes up and heads into the office. One of the security guys from QA shows up, the same one from earlier, and sends her a file that he wants her to look at to decide what to do with. This file contains the recording that she'd recorded for her son, so that her son would know that she loved him, and recorded herself singing his goodnight song, which is "You Are My Sunshine." She leaves the building, presumably heading out again to, I don't know, maybe head home this time, hard to say. And she gets a fourth unknown call and another tonal message. She picks up the phone, tries to call that number back. The number's not available, so she hangs up. And clearly at this point she is headed to pick up her son at the park outside of the school. And we get our first visit with Tommy, who is an adult who is clearly interested in children in an inappropriate way, and is using his dog as bait. Charlotte confronts this adult person in a very subtle way in front of her son, which leads them to have a very close conversation while her son goes and plays in the playground, where she removes from his person a camera blocker, something that electronically blocks the surveillance in the area, and she chokes him to death with his dog sitting there. So most dogs would not react well to this circumstance or situation, but again, I mean, suspend disbelief for this show, because you're going to have to a lot, because some of this stuff is a little sketchy. Anyway, she chokes him to death, and she takes his dog, as you can see here, and she's very proud of herself, of course, for doing this and acting more like a mother, more like what her old self would have done, I guess, because she tells the person there that she just killed, she tells him that she is a predator as well. So anyway, moving forward throughout the day, we see a diner, as you can see here, which is where Caleb and Dolores are going to sit and eat. They sit down in a booth, and of course Dolores knows an awful lot of information about Caleb, because everybody in our world at this point is being tracked by pretty much everything that they do, and everyone's life story is also well known. And she talks to him about the booth that they're sitting in and the seat he's sitting in and everything that happened in his past. And this trip down memory lane shows the point at which he was abandoned by his mother in this diner because she was a schizophrenic person. And it basically hands him a tablet with all of the information about that and a lot of the information about himself laid out there that she describes to him in detail, including the name of the waitress who takes pity on him and gives him a strawberry milkshake, which he proceeds to throw up all over himself, and we get an image of that on his shoe. Now that image had showed up before, but there's some kind of pink liquid falling off of a table's edge, but now we have some context for that at this point. More information is downloaded to Caleb, given that he is being told what is happening in his world right now, and Dolores walks him through that while taking him to a pier at the ocean, and he thinks, again, not knowing the extent to which all of our information is compromised, that she just knows that he's there. Well, she tells him that he is going to self-delete at some point in the next 10 to 12 years based on his actions and activities. She hands him the tablet again, showing him that he is unfit for social promotion and reproduction, so he is not recommended to have marriage, children, or anything. So instead of helping him out to have a good life, the system just kind of throws him to the wayside, and as Dolores says, the system doesn't invest in you just to make sure the outcome that they desire happens. So essentially telling everybody the same thing that has been said for a long time, that his life score isn't high enough to survive. So Dolores effectively recruits Caleb for whatever mission we're going to get through in this season that seems disjointed still, and that's unfortunate. Anyway, we flash back, we flash to Charlotte looking at the tablet again of her singing to her son the song, and then that sparks her to look at her phone and to tap each one of the tone messages that she's received, and they just happen to correspond with part of the song, so that's kind of convenient. So she gets in a self-driving cab, or whatever we're calling these cars, and obviously heads towards home, again, hopefully to take care of her son some more. But then she gets a wild hair, calls the number back that has been calling her, the unknown number, and when it comes up with the message saying that the number can't be reached, she types in the 4 notes of the tone, and it accepts the call. The phone on the other end picks up. You hear a bunch of probably computer noises, I guess, or what they think a computer noise would sound like, and she says, I would like to meet. And so the car automatically reboots itself and comes back online and gives her a message that she's being rerouted. The car takes her to what looks like a very nice mansion that is heavily guarded by gentlemen with very large guns, and she meets a female assistant who puts on the magic glasses so that she can have a meeting with none other than Sirach from the previous episode. We come to find out that Charlotte's actually been a mole for Sirach for a long time. In fact, going back to the Delos Park when we first saw her. So this has been going on since the first season. And she is obviously made a plan with Sirach to acquire Delos and their information, which of course she has done. And at the end of this meeting, we see what the magic glasses do, which is to make it so that the wealthy Sirach can just disapparate because he wasn't actually physically there. So this is obviously like a HoloLens technology, but it's very well done. So the last thing we see is Charlotte standing in a courtyard alone, where obviously the area is heavily guarded. So we have to assume, she's going to head back home after telling this very rich person that she's going to try to get the information that he was looking for. And that is the end of episode 3 of season 3. And I can tell you, I didn't do a review at the beginning of this because, there's no point. This episode returned back to the same reasons that we didn't enjoy season 2 at all, and that we didn't really enjoy very much the first season, the first episode of this season. They are we're back to woke storytelling. We're back to gender swapping. We're back to, I don't know. The non-linear stuff is bothering me the most. If there were some indication that it was concurrent, that would be great, but there just isn't. They did have another one of those location mark cards at the beginning of this that I didn't bother to collect because there's no point. While I think those are significant, I don't think that we're going to even know why they're significant until further along. I would surmise, I think Gary at Nerdrotic may have surmised as well, that some of this is also simulation. That is also storytelling junk that I have almost no interest in. Anyway. So, if I were going to rate this episode, I'd give it a 1 out of 5. While there were some compelling elements, it's another boring episode in my opinion. And I'm tired of the information download. I want things to happen. I don't want to be told stuff. So, anyway. That's it for today. Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you liked it, hit the like button. That'd be fantastic. If you want to subscribe, that would be super too. Other than that, please stay healthy, stay safe, wash your hands, and have a great day wherever you are. Thanks.
Thanks for visiting today. Be sure you're subscribed and hit that for alerts.
Yay!
Of course, like and share all of the videos that you can, as it helps with the algorithm. Have a great day.